I done a video ages ago about all the films that I love that everyone else hates. Right now, I'm going to do it the opposite way around. This is the films I hate that everyone else likes. Now, if you're a fan of any of these movies, and if you don't like what I have to say about them, just bear in mind that media is one of the most subjective things on the planet, and everyone has their own opinion of what they have to say. And I'm actually happy for people to like these films, and I don't care if you want to disagree with what I have to say, but just don't bash me opinion. That is the last thing. The last thing I want people doing is bashing me opinion. Like, come on lads, I respect your opinion, so you should respect me back. Please. And now without further ado, let's dive into this video. Number 9. The Lego Movie. Now, Lego Movie was one of those films that I used to love as a kid. Every character, with the exception for Batman, had their own original, unique appearance, especially Emmett. The soundtrack to this film holds up pretty well, and I think the song Everything Is Awesome is very memorable in every way. Now, back in the day when Lego Movie was first released, everyone deceived it as being a genuine stop-motion movie, and don't get me wrong, I was one of them. But my dad often told me that the film was made by CGI, and I did not believe him at first up until I read the facts online and watched the behind the scenes like I always did back then. Now, when I found out that it was 90% CGI and 10% live action, it didn't bug me at first, but in time, as time passed, it slowly started to annoy me. You see, I see Lego as being more than just a toy. I see it as an art form for amateur stop motionists. And Lego, I think when it comes to stop motion, Lego works so well in fact, that I end up relating it to it. And you know that thing where people say that CGI is overused? I see Lego Movie as being the definition of that. And yet we have had other CGI Lego movies in the past, like Clutch Powers and all that. And then we've got Lego Movie. And in all fairness, I think that picking CGI over stop motion, it was a really bad move. Because right now, I don't find it endearing or inspiring. I just find it to be generic and bland. Now, I know that the creators printed off little Lego people to put on the live action set piece. And if I was the director, I'd just use that set instead of using CGI. And it would be more cheaper to make the film. But I think that having two things at the same time, yeah. Now, if I was the director and the film flopped at cinema, I would see this as being a waste of money. So that's why I think you should only focus on one thing rather than focusing on the other. So I think using the CGI throughout the entire film and just using big, massive Lego sets for the live action, yeah, like I said before, it does seem like a waste of money. So yeah, nowadays I don't find Lego Movie interesting no more, and for now I just stick to Michael Pickaxe films because everything is awesome about him. Did you get the joke? Number 8, Cars 1. Now, I was originally going to put Cars at 5th place in this countdown, but I'm going to tell you what changed my mind. I remember watching this film once back in 2017, and I've always found Lightning McQueen to be a likeable character in a way. I remember him being treated badly by all the cars in the neighbourhood, and they forced him to create a new road. And although I get that he destroyed their road and they want him to build a new one, but I just found like the way that they were treating him was just so exaggerating that I just felt like punching them. And it wasn't until like a month ago when I explained to my mates the reasoning why I did not like Cars, and then my mate told me, like, he knew the movie more than anyone else did, and so he said to me that my Lightning McQueen had a massive ego on him. And this is something that I could not really remember at the time. Like, I never really remembered Lightning McQueen having an ego. All I remember him was seeing him like being dead cheesy, where he goes like, heh heh, and all that, you know, to his audience. Number 7, Where the Wild Things Are. I remember being very obsessed with the original story, and I remember seeing a quarter of the movie back in 2009, but then when 2015 came along, I eventually got the chance to watch the entire movie back to back. Visually, it doesn't look terrible. I think the casting do a pretty good acting job, and I also like the puppets, and I also like the area where they filmed it, and it felt more close to home. But what I did not like about this movie would be the voice performances. I don't know whether this is just me thinking this, but I really did not like the voice performance in this movie. There are so many scenes where the characters would either stutter their words or just constantly repeat a certain thing that they say. And it's not really like a one-off thing, it's like it persists throughout the entire film. Like there's constant repetition in the voice performances. And there was also the bull character in the movie who doesn't speak throughout the entire film. But at the end of the film, he starts speaking. Then there's also the chicken guy who gets his frickin' arm ripped off. And his reaction to it was the most generic thing I've ever seen in any piece of media, in my opinion. Rather than screaming in pain, he's like, "Ah, Kira, that was my favourite arm." You know, in like a dead sarcastic way, and I really did not like that at all. Number 6. The Sonic film. Now, before I get into the negatives, I do want to get over some positives I had with this film. Now, I remember seeing trailers for this film back in 2019 when it was first released, and I didn't really pay that much attention to it the first time. Then the second trailers came out with the new design of Sonic the Hedgehog, and yet again, I didn't really pay that much attention to it. But then, yes, so I didn't bother watching the film up until November 2020 because I was bored. I'd say the thing I like most about the Sonic movie would be Sonic's design. In conclusion to like all the CGI characters that we've had throughout the years, you know, like the Alvin and the Chipmunks and all that, this version of Sonic took on a more cartoonish like appearance and honestly looks really adorable. I also think that Jim Carrey fits perfect as Eggman, and he does a really good job with the character. But with the good stuff over, now on to the bads. First off, I want to talk about Sonic himself. Now, I remember being a Sonic fan back when I was little, and I've always described him as being dorky, but simultaneously chilled in a way. The movie version, on the other hand, comes off as far too hyperactive and irritating, but not irritating in an endearing way, like, say, Benito from Puss in Boots' Last Wish or Dory from Finding Nemo. The voice performance, for the most part, is okay, and Ben Schwartz does kind of make Sonic sound like a teenager. I say kind of because there were times in the recording where his voice deepens to where he ends up sounding like a 20-year-old man. And then we have the humour, which, in my opinion, I think is just bad. Like, I think the humour's bad. Not only do I find it cringe, but I also find it very outdated. It does have, like, them, you know, typical button fart joke things. And then there was a scene where Sonic did the floss, and that's been a dead trend since 2019, the floss. And yet, we also have the plot points for the movie and some of the scenes. Like, there were scenes in the film that got me questioning or just surprised me or just never really made sense to me whatsoever. Like, there was this random scene where Sonic plants his ring in Tom's garage just to go to another dimension. I get that they're trying to do this to set the plot, but it just comes across as random. Like, the reason why he did it is because he didn't want to get fined by the American government, which never really made that much sense to me, because if he can run across an island in 2 seconds, then he could just do that in 2 seconds as well. Like, it never really made that much sense to me why he had to, like, randomly break into Tom's garage just to plant his ring when he could have just done it back at his place. Do you know what I mean? And there were scenes where Tom and Sonic are driving in the car, and when I noticed it, I'm not even exaggerating this one bit, but I felt like I was rewatching Hop. So the multiple car scenes of Tom and Sonic driving throughout the American states just never really felt that original to me, do you know what I mean? While the issues I have with this movie are bad enough, the thing that really annoys me the most is how renowned it is. Like, I get that 2020 has its ups and downs when it came to its media. It had those that were absolutely despised, those that were fine, mixed reviewed, those that were loved but still had issues along the way. And just like any other year, I was curious to know what people's favourite movies were in each year. And so when I told to people, say, like, what's their favourite film of 2020, more often than just occasionally, they always seem to point their fingers to this movie, just endlessly saying, oh, it's this one, it's this one, it's this one, the Sonic film, the Sonic film, the Sonic film, the Sonic film, and it just never stops. And while I respect people's views with certain media, I just don't really get why this one seems to be dead renowned when compared to the others. I mean, like, lads, we've got Hammerlock, Birds of Prey, Bad Boys for Life, The Invisible Man, Wolf Walkers, Demon Slayer, Mugen Train, and many, many others. I mean, I could just go on forever with them. Like, any film that you could have chosen from this year, and this one movie, according to seemingly everyone, is the only solid, flawless masterpiece of 2020. So in conclusion, I think this is a really, really overrated film. I don't really fancy watching it again, and I don't plan to watch the sequels. Anyway, speaking about the sequels, most of the films from 2020 were neither close to getting a sequel or just never received one whatsoever. I mean, this Sonic film managed to get, like, a clone of itself. I mean, hell, it's got nearly a full franchise at this point. Number 5, Jackass Forever. Jackass Forever was a film that I went into the cinemas wanting to like. Now, I will admit, I loved the Jackass franchise as a whole. And I will admit, most of the jokes in this movie were pretty creative and funny by a long shot, but there was one of them that really caught me off guard, and it involves a pogo stick and a guy's nutsack. And so, like, one of the characters, like, bounces the pogo stick and then it lands on the guy's nutsack, crushing them. And I was in the cinemas, so I seen the entire thing, and he was like showing his bollock on screen, and it was like all, you know, cut open and sliced and that, and I was, oh god, it was just horrible to look at. And I actually struggled to believe that the producers who produced this movie on TV thought that this was good enough to show in front of a live audience. Like, I just can't really tell if they're trolling with us. I know some of you in the comments section are going to be like, it's only Jackass's charm, you shouldn't be getting mad at it. Which, no, because seeing a bollock getting cut open on a cartoon looks painful enough. Seeing it happen on a live action movie, even though it was staged, would look even worse. And seeing it happen in real life, on an actual camera, on actual TV, is just beyond imagination. Number 4, Fantastic Mr. Fox. Stop motion has always been the charm of my existence. Pingu was the very first stop motion show that I ever watched and took a liking to, and it encouraged me to watch other stop motion films and shows like Paranorman and many, many others, and most of them pretty much appealed to me. But within the deep corridors of reality, there was Fantastic Mr. Fox, and this stop motion movie did not appeal to me at all. But to add insult to injury, this film is renowned for being the most solid, beautiful stop motion film in media history. And growing up, I could never comprehend that. We've got Robin and Del Toro's Pinocchio, and this is the most beautiful. Every critic, every audience, every person who I've come forward to and talked to about this film just seems to treat this film with just praise after praise after praise after praise. And it astounds me how no one has any negative thoughts on it. It's hard to find anyone who doesn't. I could never truly understand or even fully get by the overwhelming support for this film. I mean, people absolutely adore this film. Alright, so what about the animation? What do I think about it? Looks alright so far. Oh my god, fucking hell. People say that Polar Express is nightmarish, but at least that film doesn't have its characters staring into the camera with the eyes wide open or twisting their legs in painful looking ways. And the second reason for why I don't like this film would be its voice performances. I don't even know whether it's just me thinking this, but the characters sound like they're mumbling their words. Number 3, Team America World Police. I remember watching this film back in the day, and as a kid, I just couldn't get by how boring this film felt, and how stereotypical it was. I remember watching the behind the scenes of this movie, and I remember the creators saying that this isn't really the countries, or this isn't really the people, this is the way America sees them. And when I saw all the Muslims dressed up as terrorists, I was left jaw-dropped, like deliberately jaw-dropped, thinking, oh my god, this is so bad. Hearing the creators say that this is the way America sees the world is not really a ringing endorsement. It's almost like they were trying to say that every American thinks that all Muslims are terrorists. There was even this one part in the scene where they dressed up Gary as a Muslim and put blackface all over him, and I didn't go too easy on it. And then there was that puppet sex scene, which for the most part just looked like something that came out of Exorcist. Now, I'm a bit of a hypocrite for saying this because Happy Time Murders does do a similar thing with their sex scene. But the difference there is that the sex scene in Happy Time Murders was more creative in a way. The one in Team America just came across as far too nightmarish in a way, and exaggerated. And the last thing I hate about this movie would be its jokes. The jokes felt like they were trying too hard, and they never really got a laugh out of me. The jokes went like something like everyone has AIDS, or I'll drill 2 holes in your dick, or shove your balls up your ass, or Michael Moore getting blown to shit. Okay, I'll admit, I actually laughed at that last one. Number 2, Madagascar. Being one of DreamWorks' most popular movies, a film that came out the same year I was born, and I've never watched it up until 16 years later. I really did try to like this movie because it did have me number 1 actor Ben Stiller. Frickin' Ben Stiller. How could I not like this movie? But yet, I just couldn't get by how awkward this movie was. There were so many scenes where it just shows Marty and Alex like constantly biting each other and putting them in awkward situations that just cringed me in a way, and the movement felt very quick-paced. Now, before I get to number 1, I've got this honourable mention for all of yous, Boss Baby. I was originally going to have like 10 movies, but changed it to 9 because Boss Baby, yeah, was going to be in the list, but this movie, I don't really have like much to say about it, and plus the film is more hated than loved, so yeah, that's why I've put it in an honourable mention. And finally, the number 1 movie that I hate that everyone else likes is, I might get a lot of shit for this, but fuck it, Isle of Dogs. All the films that I hate on this list, this one beats all of them by a long shot. And most of the issues that I have with the other films have been like little minor issues. This one, I have a lot more issues with it. I don't really know where to begin with this film, but what I do know is that the film is dead loved, but not loved in a way that I could understand. It's like overwhelmingly adored. And seemingly everyone, like an astronomical amount of people, say that this is the number 1 stop motion movie, and like everyone just gives it prey after prey, like Fantastic Mr. Fox does. And I get that people all have their opinions and stuff, but like I said before, the opinions that people have are so far-fetched that it's hard to take into consideration. Like, believe it or not, lads, the way people describe this movie is seemingly the exact opposite to the way that I describe it. Like, I'm not even joking, it's the exact opposite to the way that I see it. Now, I'd like to talk about the animation. Now, the animation in this movie looks okay, but I wouldn't say it's as visually stunning as something like Del Toro's Pinocchio or Paranorman. It's just okay. And I remember watching the movie at least 4 times on my flight to Thomas Cook. Like, I never went to cinemas to see it. I just went on an airline and watched it 4 times, going from Mexico and back. And unlike myself, like, I remember a lot of people being so hyped up over the animation, saying that this is better than Leica's or it's just absolutely phenomenal. And yeah, now I will admit, when I compare the Isle of Dogs animation to mine, I can tell that it's way above my level. But when I compare it to the likes of Paranorman, Pinocchio, Robin, Nightmare Before Christmas, Corpse Bride, with the insanely demonic looking characters, to the mannequin challenge like poses, to the lack of emotions and the somewhat lazy execution on the smoke effects, I feel that the word beautiful doesn't even begin to describe this film. Like, you do get those opinions where people would I respect opinions more than anything, but some of the stuff that people say about this movie is so hyped up, exaggerated and far-fetched to a point where I can't really tell whether it's my mind playing tricks on me or whether these people are just being delusional for the sake of grabbing attention. So what about the character designs? What do they look like? Surely they can't be as bad as... Oh my god! Fucking hell, was this movie inspired by Smile Dog JPEG or something? Lads, I thought Fantastic Mr. Fox was disturbing, but this is a whole other level of creepiness. And what really does surprise me the most about this is, despite how uncanny and disturbing they look, some people actually describe them as looking like this. And this is how I describe them. And what I do find irritatingly surprising about this film is that I remember being shocked at literally every scene in this movie, you know, from the creepy characters to the blood violence and all that. And every person and channel, you know, like IMDb, they all state that this film is a comedy, even though I really didn't get a laugh out of this film. Like, there wasn't really much there that I found funny about this film in the slightest. The film does host some cast members like Bill Murray, and Bill Murray, honest to God, he is a bloody legendary character. Like, he has the voice of an angel, but his voice in this movie just sounds like nails scraping a chalkboard. Remember when I said that in Fantastic Mr. Fox I couldn't really tell whether the characters were mumbling or not? At least in that movie, there was more yahays and woohoos and, you know, people talking loud and all that. But in Isle of Dogs, all the characters were like mumbling their words, just like the characters in Fantastic Mr. Fox did. And this film did have a happy ending, just like Fantastic Mr. Fox. But the difference there is that Fantastic Mr. Fox executed their happy ending in a way that felt like a happy ending. The happy ending in Isle of Dogs, even with it, the characters were still like mumbling their words, and it just made it look blatantly miserable. Next up, there's the smoke effects. I did say that I found the smoke effects lazy in this, but not all of them. But there was one at the very end of the movie that did get me questioning. Now, there's nothing wrong with using balls of fluff as smoke for your stop motion movie, and I know a lot of people do that. But if they're executed right, then it just makes them look very realistic. But in most of the scenes, like the explosions and all of that, they all look dead realistic. Like, they fade away like a proper dust cloud. But at the end of the movie, when they all have a fight, there's a scene where, like, the smoke, like, rather than fading away, I remember it, like, slowly rolling off the stage and running away. And I don't know, it just felt lazy to me. Next up, I'd like to talk about the plot element. Now, I think the reason why Isle of Dogs fails in the aspect of storytelling would be the amount of scenes that don't really serve that much of a purpose to the story. Now, there are 3 scenes that I remember, like, these 3 scenes, except for the taiko scene at the beginning of the movie, the 3 of them, like the kabuki and the sumo wrestling and the iconic sushi scene, there's no problem of having like satisfying imagery in your media, and I get like you know, we all like to be satisfied and all that, but the problem that I have with these scenes is that they don't really serve that much of a purpose to the story or the plots, but exist only to manipulate the audience into feeling satisfied, which inevitably they did. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with putting satisfying imagery in your media, and you can do that no matter what, but without any plot or reason, it just comes across as pointless. I think a good example of how this should have been done is in Jack the Giant Slayer. In this movie, there's a scene of a crown getting made, and the reason why the crown scene works is because the crown is the main plot for the movie. And at the end of every movie, you're supposed to wonder, what happens to this guy? What happens to this woman? What happens to this thing? What happens to this object? And in the aftermath of the movie, it demonstrates what happens to the bad guy's crown in the movie, at the end of the film. Not to mention that the execution on the music works so well that it just makes it endearing to look at. But in Isle of Dogs, as much as I appreciate them trying to acknowledge Japanese culture in a positive light, they just feel dead out of place and don't add anything to the story. Now, I know that the movie uses 2 languages, Japanese and English dialogue, which itself is not an issue, but I do hear people saying that they never used subtitles in this movie. And if that's true, then I'm going to say it, it's a bad move. I mean, that was a bad move. And the reason why I call it a bad move is because England and Japan are not really holiday countries. And if a country is not meant for holidays, then it's highly unlikely that the natives are not going to be able to speak another world language. I mean, some of them do, don't get me wrong, but just not all of them. Like, I get where they're coming from with English dialogue for the dogs and Japanese dialogue for the humans, but what if the Japanese audience want to know what the dogs are saying and the English audience want to know what the Japanese are saying? So that's why I feel the subtitles should have been included. Like, if I was the director, I would have Japanese subtitles for the dogs and English subtitles for the humans. And that way, it could just maybe make the story more comprehensible and insightful to watch. But I do hear people saying that they never use subtitles for this movie. And if that is to be true, then The two languages are just lost in translation, do you know what I mean? And the last two things I'd like to talk about this film would be its rating and its blood violence. I was actually astounded how the film managed to get away with a PG rating. And the violence depicted throughout the film looks so gory. Like there's ears getting ripped off, characters getting bruised to fuck, kids getting impaled through the head twice, eyes getting popped out, heart surgery. I mean, this isn't the type of violence that you would typically see in a PG rated film, nor a 12 movie, but a 15 rated film. And despite the film being a comedy, even if this was dark humour, then they did a really bad job because it's not executed in a way that makes it seem funny. I never felt like there was any clever context for why they're in the situations at all. It just felt like it was happening just for the shock value. So with all that being said, I really do despise this film. I don't care what people think about it. If they want to call it good, they can go ahead and do that. You have every right to like it. But I just don't get what people like about it. It's one of those movies that I just cannot see the value in. That is it for this video. Please subscribe for more content, and I'll see you all in the next video.